Hello, my name is Beth Carrington, and I'm here to introduce our speaker. Kort Branscombe has been working in continuous improvement and process management for 7 years across various service and manufacturing settings, helping teams make their work better. He's based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Kort has been working with ADM out of Erlanger, Kentucky for over 8 years. Currently, he is the global process owner for global technology, and he's here to talk to us today. So, Kort, take it away.
Thank you very much, Beth, and thank you all for allowing me to join. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you're coming from. I'm here to speak to you today about a little bit on amplifying technology delivery using Kata. So on today's agenda are really the topics that I'd like to cover. First is a little bit about my company, ADM. I then want to get into why scientific thinking. Next, I want to talk about, what is Kata, right? And then our journey towards embedding that scientific thinking into kind of our operation as an IT department. And then we'll get into wrap up. So first and foremost, what is ADM? ADM is really a large agricultural manufacturing company, right? So you can see the value chain listed here. We source and purchase, grain from farmers, corn and soybeans. We then transport that, process it into a variety of products and byproducts. That find its way onto store shelves or into your pantry in some form or fashion. And so you can see really the breadth of that value chain, and really where I think my organization comes into play as an IT department or global technology department is via enabling the entirety of that value chain through technology. So I wanted to do a quick highlight on ADM by the numbers. I won't drain this slide, but we are a Fortune 50 company. We have 42,000 employees, over 700 facilities, worldwide across the globe. We're about 122 years old, so we've been operating for some time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, why scientific thinking. What is scientific thinking? So first, how many of you, I guess, maybe show of hands, have you've gone through maybe some initial planning, you have a really good idea, you have consensus with your team or maybe other parts of the organization as to where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And then, after you leave the meeting or after you get started on your journey, reality sets in, right? And you find yourself going through all kinds of trials, tribulations, and obstacles that really prevent you, or at least stand in your way towards achieving that overall goal that you had originally set out to. So that's really where scientific thinking comes into play. So to quote Mike Rother, rather than trying to hold on to a sense of certainty based on our opinions at the moment or at a given moment, we can gain confidence from a learned ability to navigate uncertainty. And that's really what scientific thinking means to me. It's how do we, I think, embrace the unknown, embrace the uncertainty to take a step in the right direction towards our overall goal, learn from it, and then adjust accordingly, and then go through the same process. So that brings me then to what is Kata. So maybe many of you have participated in martial arts or have had children that have participated in martial arts, and that's really what Kata is borrowed from, right? So it's simply stated a routine that you practice consistently in order to develop new skills. I think the mantra or the thinking behind it is that it's easier to act our way into a new way of thinking than it is to think our way into a new way of acting. And so Kata, specific to developing scientific thinking in an individual, finds itself in two places. So the first is the improvement Kata, and I'll go into this in a little more granular detail in a couple slides. But the improvement Kata is really a routine structured to help develop scientific thinking in an individual. The next one, running in parallel of the improvement Kata, is the coaching Kata. So this is a set of questions designed to reinforce that scientific thinking model within the individual that's solving the problem, right? The learner, as it's referred to. So in tandem, these make up what's known as the starter Kata. So diving a little bit deeper into what these two structures kind of represent or how to go about them. First, I'll focus in on the improvement kata. So the improvement kata starts with us getting a direction or challenge, right? So this could be a large goal or a large organizational need that we want to achieve by some given date. We'll say 1 to 3 years into the future. Maybe we don't know how we're going to get there, and that's okay. But we at least we know that we want to achieve this or have this be our reality 1 to 3 years out from where we're at today. So then specific to that direction or challenge, where are we at today? That brings us then to the second step of grasping the current condition, right? So based on the way that maybe we're talking about or measuring our overall direction or challenge, where do we sit today, right? What data do we have today that tells us how we're operating in accordance with those same kind of structures or principles that we're driving towards with our overall direction or challenge? Once we've determined what our current condition is, we can then set a smaller, much smaller target condition, which is our third step, right? Establish your target, your next target condition. So that target condition, where our direction or challenge is 1 to 3 years out, we want to set this one maybe 2 weeks out from today, right? So that gives us then the flexibility to I think try things to understand how do we take small steps and even fail in some cases, right? And learn from that to then course correct, adjust based on what worked and what didn't work to have a more improved picture and understanding as to how then we tackle the next obstacle. And that's really where we get into number 4, right? Once you've grasped your current condition, you have your target condition that's going to at least directionally get you closer to your direction or challenge as you start to iterate. But you really experiment, right? You try things, you do stuff. You run experiments to break down those obstacles, to overcome identified obstacles. And that's really, scientific thinking as played out in the improvement kata in a nutshell. So a few key points that I wanted to focus in on specific to the improvement kata. So first, the path is neither predictable nor straight, and that's okay. That's reality, right? Each one of our environments is different. Each environment is constantly shifting and evolving. So it's our approach towards, I think, handling and managing that uncertainty that ensures our success. And that's where the improvement kata comes into play. Next is that you don't have to reach the overall challenge right away, right? We're setting these 1 to 3 years out intentionally, right? They should be large goals. They should be challenges. It's in the name, right? And so if we're able to accomplish that within the scope of a month, then maybe we weren't pushing ourselves hard enough, or maybe now we've learned something that allows us to set the successive or next direction or challenge much better. The third key point that I wanted to focus in on is that our thinking at initial planning is likely the least defined, right? So just like I showed on a slide, previously, right? Our plan versus reality slide. We don't know much right out of the gate, right? When we're beginning that initial planning phase, and our threshold of knowledge, as we refer to it, is very close to where we're at today. And only through experimentation do we learn more. Only through trying things do we learn more about the environment and what's going to work and what is the cause and effect of the things that we're doing and the impact that it has on the environment around us. So just a few key points that I wanted to cover specific to the improvement kata. Next, running in parallel of the improvement kata, as I said, is the coaching kata. So this is a set of 5 questions that a coach asks of the learner at a daily coaching cycle, right? So as the improvement kata is working, as the learner is going through and running those experiments, the coach is there to help really facilitate the thinking, right? And to make sure that any blind spots that the learner may have, that they're being challenged to uncover those and to experiment and break down those identified obstacles. So as I mentioned, the first key point is that we all have blind spots, right? Regardless of how maybe effective we are, or how maybe well understood the problem is, there are always items that maybe are so near to us that we can't see. And so because of that, having somebody kind of in parallel coach you through to identify and uncover those areas where maybe we're not seeing things clearly. It's tremendously valuable, and it really helps. Next is that learning a new skill is accelerated with the support of a fluent coach. If I wanted to go learn how to golf, as an example, it's one thing if I were to just go out and start hitting balls, right? And that's one way to start and to get better. However, if I have a golf pro with me that's actually showing me proper form, teaching me how to hit the ball and address the ball and stand correctly, I'm going to go further faster with the help of that coach. And so it's no different in, this scientific thinking development model, and by way of the coaching kata. So next, I want to talk a little bit about our journey so far within ADMIT. So our objective or vision is to develop a continuous improvement mindset within IT. So a lot of lean thinkers on this call today, I'm sure, and that likely means a lot of different things to all of us, right? Depending on our perspectives or experience or background. So to us, that meant, how do we develop individuals that are solving problems on a daily basis, right? Every day, new problems. We're seeing continuous improvement behaviors. And so that's really where we rooted towards scientific thinking and the kata practice, right? And so as we learned more about this, right, our thinking was, well, how do we expose ourselves more to this and try it out? And so that's really where we began. We had 6 individuals, so a smaller kind of cohort, where we started to learn, read, reflect on key source material. So the 2 that I'll plug here are Toyota Kata by Mike Rother, as well as Bringing Scientific Thinking to Life by Sylvan Landry. And then as we worked through those as a team and reflected and talked about how this would work within our organization, how we could apply it, we then put it into practice, right? We started to run the play. We started to try it. We had designated coaches, we had designated learners, and we really started to work through the improvement in coaching kata to see how this would play out for us. We also used the kata in the classroom puzzle exercise a couple times just to see kind of a more simulated version of how kata would work. And that was, I think, a lot of fun, and we learned a lot from that too. So then we said that this was a worthy experiment to try, but let's try to stand up kata more comprehensively at ADM within IT. And that's where we partnered with Beth and with the Lean Enterprise Institute to really stand up our first kata cohort. And so that took place in late April, early May. We had 20 individuals that joined us. It was 3 intense days of learning and really of practice. And that was awesome. And so since then, those Kata Cohort 1 teams have been practicing on a near daily basis to accomplish their challenges, right? To work through the goals that they had set in that initial Kata cohort. However, it wasn't without its challenges, right? So I guess first and foremost, we had difficulty around team formation. So we decided let's pick maybe individual problems. We would scope the team around that problem as best as we could. Oftentimes that only kind of landed with maybe 2 or 3 that had some skin in the game specific to that problem. And then we just rounded out the remainder, 2 spots with maybe random individuals that were just part of the cohort, said, hey, I want to learn more about that kata thing. So then as we started the practice following the workshop, those that maybe didn't have proximity to that problem as part of their work, they became disengaged, right? They didn't feel the pain as much that this problem was causing, and thus it was easier to find priority in their own work, right? In the work that they should be focused on as well. Next was around team capacity. And so this continues to be a factor, and I'm sure that many of us face this, right? But when you introduce a new improvement tool or I guess a new way of thinking, it kind of starts out as job plus one, right? It's, I have to do all my work, and then also I have to do this new thing, right? So in this case, the improvement in coaching kata. And while it's a relatively small time investment, it is still an investment. And when you have more work than week already, it's hard to carve out that time to make sure that you're also improving and focus on solving those problems, so that way they don't become recurring fires that we have to put out. Next was around poor internal support capability, right? So the team of 6 individuals, and we'll talk through them a little bit more here in a second. We didn't have a depth of fluency, I guess I would say, with the improvement in coaching kata outside of what we had read about and practiced ourselves. And so Beth, working with us and providing that master coaching, I think that it really accelerated how much we learned, but we didn't know all of that right out of the gate. And so we weren't as effective in helping others in our cohort to succeed as well. The last point I'll call out is that we went through the planning loop, right? We saw that with a couple different groups where, the whole notion of scientific thinking is that we try something, right? We do it in small increments and see how it worked, right? What did that cause? We think that it's going to yield this effect. Let's try it, and then let's see if it actually happened that way. And so whenever we just then churn and spend a bunch of time in data analysis and gathering and planning of what we're going to do, sometimes we never end up taking that step to actually do it. And so that was another, I think, pitfall that we found early on within that Kata cohort. So since then, like I said, those are just some obstacles that we faced. We have addressed many of those, and I'll talk through some of the experiments we're running here shortly. But like I said, that Kata cohort 1 is still practicing on a near daily basis to solve those challenges that they had initially defined back in April and May of 2024. Since then, we've also kind of generated some broader awareness within the organization for those that weren't part of the cohort, right? So we did a internal Kata seminar where it was a 1-hour kind of community practice engagement exercise to showcase what Kata is, right, and how we're using it. And so we used paper airplanes to run some quick experiments as a group. It was a lot of fun, and I think it really did build the fervor for what Kata could do for the organization. And some of those individuals that were in that seminar, they asked, "Hey, could I be part of this Kata cohort 2 that's coming up?" And then that brings me to the next point on the page. So in November, actually a couple weeks ago, we had another Kata cohort, right? 19 individuals coming together to go through a very similar learning experience that Kata cohort 1 did back in April and May. However, this time we had I think some experiments that we wanted to try as the advanced group, right? To make Kata cohort 2 better than Kata cohort 1, we said, well, let's take some of the learners that were part of Kata cohort 1 and elevate them into the advanced group, right? So no longer are they just focused on solving their own team's problem, but let's pull them up to where their challenge is now developing this CI mindset within IT using Kata, right? How do we use them as, I think, agents to help us as an organization develop this capability of scientific thinking? So that group was also, those also became embedded second coaches, right? So for the 19 individuals that joined the class, not only were they formed in teams around a common problem, which we'll get to that here in a second, but each one of those teams had an embedded second coach that had been through Kata cohort 1 and had gone through 3-4 months of practice and had developed real fluency as to how to use the improvement in coaching katas. And so that meant whenever a problem inevitably popped up, instead of waiting, with your hand up at the table to say, "Hey, Beth, whenever you get a second, could you stop by? We have a question." They had that support right there at their table. They were able to get those answers quickly. They were able to get that coaching guidance as soon as they started to veer off the rails. And that made for a much better experience. And so now as those teams go back to their work and they begin that same daily practice journey, those embedded second coaches are still part of their team and making sure to keep steering them in the right direction whenever we start to go off course. So lastly, on this slide, I want to talk through team formation on that second Kata cohort. So we elected to, I think, formulate teams around their common team, right? Their organizational team. We had members all from the same organization that theoretically should have been focused on the same problem that we pulled together, and we were very intentional about that. So no more random people being pulled into kind of what's called a learning lab type situation or relationship. And that seemed to work well in certain cases. However, we are running into obstacles there too. So just because they're part of the same functional organization does not mean that they work on the same thing for the same customers, or that they experience the same problems. So another experiment, right, that helped us to, I think, learn a little bit more about how to approach then the future, right, of Kata Cohort 3. So before I jump there, like I said, the Kata Cohort 2 has started their journey, and they're going through near daily practice today. We're also looking to stand up a Kata community of practice within our organization. So how do we take the folks from Kata Cohort 1 and Kata Cohort 2, bring them together in a recurring or cadence basis and share best practices, right? Talk about how we're approaching challenges, talk about what we're learning, bring others to the table as well, right? To get them, I think, exposure to what Kata is and how it's helping teams solve problems. And we see that being really the cultural change, or generating that cultural change that we need to have in order to achieve our overall vision in the top right. So last but certainly not least, looking ahead to next year, we're looking to stand up a third Kata cohort, right? And so some of the experiments we want to try there, once again, embedded second coaches, however, not from the advanced group, right? We want to now take coaches from Kata cohort 1 and Kata cohort 2 and use those as our second coaches for that third Kata cohort. And then lastly, challenge alignment, right? How do we make sure, or how do we try, I guess, having the challenges or problems that we're solving in the Kata cohort be aligned to our overall strategy as an organization, instead of just a problem specific to my team? How do I make sure that it's really a needle mover for our overall organization? And so that's another I think scoping mechanism that we're looking at for that third Kata cohort. So kind of in wrap up, how can you start your journey? So first and foremost, there's a lot of great resources online. So I implore you to check out lean.org. So they have a page all around Kata, a lot of great articles, many of them written by Beth, actually. So feel free to check those out. Those are great resources. I would also recommend checking out Mike Rother's Toyota Kata website at the University of Michigan.edu. I'll send out these slides if I can. I guess I don't know what the procedure is there, but I'll try to provide these slides to the audience so you guys can click these links. But next is really start practicing, right? Be a learner, find a coach, and be a coach, find a learner, right? And find somebody else that's interested in this, ideally in your organization, maybe in your team. And start to run the play, right? Learn how to use the starter kata. And start to try it, right? Start to actually demonstrate scientific thinking, and that's really where I think you'll see the value and benefit as you develop that scientific thinking fluency. So last but certainly not least, engage in the community. So there's a pretty big Kata following globally. So I would recommend checking out Kata schools worldwide, as well as LEI, and they'll both have, I think, tremendous resources and a tremendous community that will help you as you start your journey and as you run into obstacles along the way. So all of that said, I know we have about, I think, 6 minutes left. So I'll go ahead and maybe hand back over to Beth for questions or reflections from the group. Like I said, I'll try to make slides available as best as I can, and connect with me. Reach out to me if you have questions. If you liked today's session, you want to learn more, or you didn't like today's session, that's okay too. Happy to hear any and all feedback. So please, I encourage you to connect and reach out to me. So Beth, I'll go ahead and hand back over to you.
Excellent. Hey, thank you, Kort. Really interesting journey. That's great. Please, if anyone has any additional questions, add them to the Q&A, and Kort is here for the next 5 minutes to answer those questions. First one up, Kort. You work in a technology environment, and it's a non-traditional lean kind of experience. In your experience, has your team faced any unusual obstacles or anything unique that's different? And in manufacturing, we're used to these tools and techniques and approaches and experiments. How is it going in the global technology world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think it's no different than largely any sort of lean approach or tool that one might leverage in the service side, right, versus manufacturing. So in manufacturing, you can see the widgets rolling down the line. You can see the worker interacting with the line in order to, get their part done to move, work along. In IT, in finance, in procurement, in so many of these kind of more transactional or service related processes, it's hard to see that work. And I don't think the process thinking is always intuitive to folks. And so I think one challenge or obstacle we faced is how do we kind of get them started thinking about the pattern of work today and the desired pattern of work that we want to see by the end of that target condition or by the time we meet our challenge. Great question.
Yeah, it is a non-traditional environment. One last question, and I have another one. I have a couple here. I know your organization, people in the room, you had some Scrum masters there, practicing Agile Scrum. Do you see a connection between Kata and they seem to be pretty early adapters? Is there a connection that you can define between those kinds of thought patterns?
At least from my I would say shallow understanding of agile and agile frameworks, I would say there's absolutely a connection. I think that's something that we're actually further exploring with those same individuals, Beth, that you mentioned that were in Kata cohort 2. But if I think about where there is, I guess, overlap or where they mesh well together, you're trying to take a larger feature or epic or capability and break that down into something smaller, more manageable, and something that I think we can do a better job planning and executing towards. And that's really no different than Kata, right? So I guess definitely some overlap there, Beth.
Excellent. Okay, from Carlos, how to get a company's management to embark on this Kata journey? Consider that most people view problem solving in a very traditional way.
Yeah, fantastic question, Carlos. I think that sponsorship is key, right? Especially as you think about the scope of change, at least culturally, that something like a more widespread Kata deployment could have. I think that impact needs to be readily understood, and it needs to have alignment with your organization's leadership to make sure that they're sponsoring, right? They're bought into how you're approaching it and the benefits and outcomes they'll see from it. I think providing that routine update over time as well ensures that you're staying on the path that they expect and that there's no surprises, from either side. But also that they start to learn, right, how Kata works, and as they're maybe visiting storyboards, these are the questions that we're seeing coaches ask learners, and here's why that's important. I think that's critical. Actually, our challenge, if I jump back a slide, sorry, of developing that continuous improvement mindset within IT came from our chief technology officer. So from the senior most leader of our organization in IT.
Excellent. So you had pull from that challenge already to go down the path of scientific thinking in terms of achieving challenges or goals. Where did some of your goals come from? Like, we often have annual planning or Hoshinkanri or value stream maps. How did your team select the challenges or articulate the challenges that they're working on? Where did those come from?
Yeah, great question. So that's been an evolution across the 2 Kata cohorts we've had so far, and looking ahead to Kata cohort 3. So the first, go ahead, Beth, you have something?
I think we're at time.
Oh, we're at time. Okay.
We'll have to ponder that question.
It's an evolution. We're learning. We're challenging obstacles.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kort. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you all. Have a wonderful